If you wish, Dwayne, I can give you some, give everybody some points on international protection for copyrights.
That'd be good. That'd be good. Very good. Thank you, Professor.
I'll bet Everett knows a little bit too.
Yeah.
Oh, but the international stuff, man, please.
Yeah.
You are
we just lose
intellectual. We're counting on you for intellectual stuff.
Oh boy. if you're referring to me, we're really in trouble.
Well, I want you to know that Everett and I are willing to kind of do back-to-back here because we're both Fresno State graduates. So back-to-back, we're willing to take it all on, international, whatever.
Yeah.
Wow. Isn't that Aaron Judge's school as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, Aaron Judge and I played on the same team, just 50 years apart.
I'd love to see him standing next to you, Dwayne.
Oh, wouldn't that be something? My best friend in graduate school was a kid from Canada, and he was 6'9", and of course here I am at 5'5", but the two of us had a great time until he had to go from one building to the next, and we had to share an umbrella. That was not all that helpful. So
amazing.
I want to mention that Flavia, even though she can't be here this morning because she came down with COVID last night, she's offered to have her session taped and given to everyone present here. So that's something she'll work out with Cesar because she did put together an amazing slideshow. So we haven't lost her totally. There's backup plan.
Yeah, so don't feel we were kind of joking, Everett. Sorry. So don't feel obligated to fill in the gap. The gap will be filled with Flavia.
I'm pretty sure I'd be a poor replacement anyway.
Well, we'll let the professor handle some of that. So why don't we go ahead and get started? And are you live streaming and getting ready? Thank you, Cesar. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. We're here with another one of our Global Chamber Authors events, and we have a terrific group to present today. And we're going to start with Christopher Herring. And I want to tell you a little bit about Christopher. He's a fellow who spent quite a few years in the military, retired in the Air Force as an officer, and he's been out involved in doing all kinds of publishing work for a number of years now, and has really 10 bestsellers that he's been a part of putting together and publishing. So he really understands this world of authors and helping authors be successful. And so we're glad to have Christopher here this morning. And I'm sure as he shares with us, he'll have some other items that he can share with us about him that we really will have fun knowing about. So Christopher, if you don't mind, please take it away.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, first of all. Thank you, Gloria, for your amazing leadership and just being able to put together, a book author series. I have had the pleasure of being able to work with book authors after I was actually more involved with magazine publishing in San Antonio. I started a company called Riverwalk Publishing, and we had the first Riverwalk magazine of all names, right? The Riverwalk. And when I established the company, I was in the military, on active duty. And I remember getting a call from one of the political leaders of the city and said, well, who had the nerve to establish a magazine named Riverwalk after the Riverwalk of San Antonio? And so it was me, an airman in the Air Force, who saw that the #1 tourist attraction in the state of Texas happened to be the Riverwalk and the Alamo. So created the company Riverwalk Publishing. And then it was actually some years that we were doing magazine publishing, but then I met amazing author Stephanie Austin, who wrote a book called My Will or His Will. And as she had a book entitled My Will or His Will, I quickly saw after reading it that she had an amazing workbook. So we put together a workbook for her book, which was a bestseller on Amazon. And it kind of gave me my first opportunity to be a co-author. But my joy really has been working with authors who have a book idea, authors who may have small budgets that they're trying to experience the traditional opportunities to be published. And then I also look at, in this day and age, we are in the day and age of self-publishing, where so many people have book ideas and they watch YouTube videos and they try to do it themselves. But I'm sure that we'll learn today, even as Everett speaks to us later, that there's so many dangers for authors to really to ruin good book ideas because of their ambition to self-publish. And I'm not saying that ambition is bad. I'm just saying that unless you really understand the legal piece, which we would have received today, the legal piece, understanding the promotion piece, what does it really mean when an author is self-promoting a book versus someone else, third party, helping them to share their book with the world. So that's where I would love to spend some time with today, and I'll give you back the opportunity to move to another person today, Dwayne.
Wayne, you're muted there.
Sorry there. Yeah, we'll be eager to have you continue on with some of that, and would like to introduce Everett O'Keefe. He's an international bestseller, has actually 6 Amazon #1 bestseller books. He's helped promote and build 45 other best-selling books, and he's really helps with hybrid publishing. And hybrid means more than one part of the process. So it's all complicated today, and so that's a significant part. And of course, he helps business people, medical people, people who want to establish a book and put themselves out there and establish them as a credible talent in a particular area. And so getting the book published becomes a significant part of that. And so the guidance that Everett provides helps people build that platform. So Everett, share with us.
Thank you, Dwayne. Yeah, so we, as Dwayne mentioned, we really do specialize in nonfiction books that are primarily business building books. They are created by speakers, by coaches, consultants, business owners and executives, medical executives, also directors of nonprofits and pastors of churches. And the books are created not so much with the goal of selling lots of books and developing royalties from selling lots of books, but really creating a book that can lift the brand, that can be leveraged. We talked with our clients and how developing royalties from the sale of books is one of the most difficult things that can be done, and the most unpredictable. But making money with a book rather than on a book can be highly predictable and highly profitable if done properly. So that's really what we specialize. And I need to give Dwayne an updated bio where we've eclipsed the 100 mark for the number of best-selling books that we've published now, and really excited to help the business people continue to leverage the incredible power of books. So in fact, that's why I wrote this book, The Power of the Published, was to just help people understand what a book can do for them and for their brand, and happy to offer a link there that people can acquire that book for free if they like.
Superb. My goodness. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So it's only 100 now, huh?
Yeah. we had this poster that had the top or the first 50 of Ignite Press, and we had that for a couple of years. Now we are putting together our poster of the first 100, and we'll be tracking as we continue to increase.
Superb. I appreciate that. We'd like to call on Professor Ansis, if you don't mind. And one of the things that we want to be sure and cover today is this whole issue of copyright and the value of copyright. And so we would really like to hear from you, Professor, just about your experience, and of course a lot of publishing and that you've done, and to really understand copyright, and also from an international perspective. So if you could do that and share with us, that would be appreciated.
I'll be delighted. And first of all, I want to welcome everyone this morning. Good morning. It is absolutely a great forum, and thank you, Dwayne, for chairing the meeting today, and thank you, Gloria, for being the fire behind all the events. The experience that I had in copyright, I was originally born in Florence, in Italy, and then moved to this country, and my entire life has been international. Is both South America, Asia. So never thought about writing a book, except we, as a coaching company, we have trained in about 40 years, probably about 85,000 people. So it's not a huge number of millions, but it definitely is a valid number. So the question that we had at one time is, well, how do we put the knowledge that we received from these trainings and seminars into a book? And so rather than writing a how-to book like a Tony Robbins would do, we decided to write a very special. When I was a kid, I loved the story about King Arthur. I loved story about wizards and witches and whatnot. So we actually converted all the learning of 40 years and what we learned from the participants of our programs in 13 Rules of the Games of Life. And we put them into the scenario 1239 in England, in Wales, where two young brothers have to cross a magical forest. So a very unique book, very different than everything else. So the question came, okay, now that we've written the book, is how do we publish it, of course, but before publishing is how do we protect it? Because not only the 13 Rules of the Game of Life is something unique. I mean, if you think about 90,000 people, 85,000 people, their knowledge and our knowledge and the expertise that we developed and success stories that we have, and it's pretty unique in our small domain. So the question, how do we protect it? Well, of course, you go to an attorney, and attorneys charge money. So the question is, but we needed to understand the process, because the question is not, not only the US, but is what about if we translate in a different language from English? What happens in Germany? What happens in Italy? What happens in Spain? What happens down in Asia, et cetera, et cetera. So what we found out, first of all, we filed the copyright. We just actually got to the government site for copyright laws, and we just completed copyright with the understanding that if you make few changes, by the way, what I'm providing today is not a legal information, disclaimer. So you guys, you got to check it out yourself and make sure you're responsible and accountable. But one of the things that is interesting is we have, my wife, who's a graphic designer, has done an incredible, fantastic job to create almost like paintings that are part of the book to describe the story. So the question is, how do we protect the graphic? How do we protect the textbook, et cetera, et cetera? So, and we did the best by following, the government website regulations. But then the question is, when we change it, not the format, but some of the words were added for small, minor changes. Your original copyright is valid, but be aware that you can actually update your copyright. So it's not just you have a copyright and then you can't touch it. You just can continually update it. What's really interesting is what happens if you go to a foreign country? Well, what we discovered in our research that I believe was 1971, there was a meeting in Bern in Switzerland, and the meeting was about copyright. It's called actually the Bern Convention of the Protection of Literary and Artistic Work, and the agreement was formed in 1971, And there are 179 contracting parties to this agreement. So what's very interesting is the difference between patents, where you can go to the Convention on Paris and apply for a patent and be protected for a year in all the participating countries. Then after a year, you have to actually apply for a patent in each one of those countries. What's really interesting for copyright, it is almost the opposite. That is, once you apply and file for the Convention of Berne as a copyright protection, you don't have to file in each country. In effect, one of the statutes of Berne, of the Berne protection, says that very specifically that no country of the convention can force you to file in the country. So once you file in the country, you're protected in 179 countries. Now, the protection is actually provided by the country themselves. Now, I just wrote last night, there are different rights for belonging to the called it Convention of Berne as copyright protection. One, you have the right to translate. One, you have the right to make changes and arrangements of your work. You have the right to perform the book, the text in public. You have the right to recite the public work in public. You have the right to communicate to the public the performance of the work that you're doing from your books. You have the right to broadcast. You have the right to make reproductions of your book. And you have the right, very important, you have the right to use the work that you have actually submitted for audiovisual work. So those are the elements that allowed us to be protected as English version or translated version in other countries. It is, and the protection is interesting. The protection is not a US legal protection overseas, but is actually the responsibility of the participating country to protect your copyright. And if you go on the internet, you can find out, but remember, it's very important for your protection globally, because just because you publish in the US, it doesn't mean people are not going to read from other countries. And the question is, if you don't file with the Convention of Berne, they can actually use your US materials in other countries without any consequence. So your US copyright does not cover anything that is not national. So very important, just go on the internet, click in and look for Convention of Berne for copyrights, as opposed to the Convention of Paris for patents. So Convention of Berne for copyrights, and read it. It's very simple reading, and the application is very simple, but I really strongly recommend that you file. The US actually started not in 1971, was not part of the initial convention, but they actually joined in 1989. So the question is, legally, is where is the protection in between? And I'll let that be handled by an attorney, but it's clearly stated in all the rights and regulations. And that's what I have for you guys today.
Thank you very much, Professor Ansys. That really gives us a terrific, good overview. And we were supposed to have a wonderful lady by the name of Flavia Campbell be with us this morning, but she actually has now battling the last day or so a real battle with COVID that has just really grounded her. So she was just unable to be here with us. And she's an attorney who really works principally with copyright. And but as you just heard from Professor Ansys, she was going to make certain that you understood that she was going to share information, but it was not legal advice. So that's a real important piece here, is to understand that we're not giving legal advice here, but we're giving information, and then you can go check that out. And that's one of the reasons that we end up needing to engage with someone like Christopher, or engage with someone like Everett, who really can guide us through these various things, because just getting the book written, getting into the writing process, continuing the encouragement that it takes to make it happen, there's also these very important structural issues of getting your copyright and process in place.
Dwayne.
So Christopher, if you don't mind, we'd love to have you share just a little more with us about maybe sort of an example of a project or
Sure.
anecdotes, things that you have experienced that would just really just help us all understand a little bit better about the process.
Dwayne?
Well, you made some great points, and the fact of the matter is that every book author is a little bit different in terms of what they want and what they expect. Some book authors, they are thinking long term. They want to have their own copyright. They don't want to give the permissions to a company to own their intellectual property. And so I will work with my client to their comfort level. In fact, I had one book that's actually getting ready to be released, and it's a poetry book. And the author went to copyright.gov and we did a Zoom and did a screen share, and I actually saw exactly how she was building out her copyright for her book. In the contract, since I do have various expenses and so forth, we went through the contract via Zoom in terms of what, the front end and the back end of the transaction look like. Even when book authors go onto the Amazon platform, many times, like the self-published ones I was talking about before, they sometimes do things that they really don't understand what they're doing. Amazon will give an author, their ISBN version, and will own some of the intellectual properties of the authors without them even really understanding the implications of what they're doing. And so we just, I throw the caution to authors before they publish, simply to give them, a comparison about self-publishing. I'm an independent publisher. I heard Everett's a hybrid publisher. So there's different models that may fit different people and different needs. And so that's really my the basis of why I think that, for me, I love having a legal service. I use a prepaid legal or a legal shield service, so I can actually talk to an attorney about, what I'm doing with my clients. And so I invest in that type of service to keep me, in compliance as much as possible. But there's so many different areas of compliance. I mean, sometimes books have illustrations, and illustrations are also one of those areas where, a person may have an intellectual property claim. Then, the disclaimers between the authors and the publishers about, whether or not your writing is your original work, or did you plagiarize? So these are all different things in which are challenges that publishers experience. I just named a few, and I'm sure Everett can even add to that.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll jump in with that. So I'm really glad that, Christopher, you brought up the idea of who owns this information anyway, because a lot of people sell their rights to their own content whenever they engage with a publisher. And so it is important that you understand, that people understand what type of publisher they're working with and understand the contract, because most traditional and a lot of hybrid publishers will end up owning the content of the author. It's being sold away as part of the contract. And a lot of authors don't understand how restrictive that can be, because the contract may keep them from very often from giving away their content. It may keep them from sharing more than 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 chapters of their book, like in let's say a free teaser or something that you might want to give from your website. And it may also control derivative works. Yes. So if you write the book, but now you want to make a movie or a play or or the sequel or whatever, that contract may very well restrict your ability to do it, or at least gives the publisher the first rights at that next piece of creation. And when you think about how small publishing advances are, they get smaller and smaller and fewer and fewer. You think you're giving away your rights, and maybe you're giving your rights away for your book for $10,000. You got a $10,000 advance. Well, that's really, you just really sold your content for cheap, and that is the challenge. So I'm glad you brought that up, because contracts, if you're going to engage with a publisher where rights are going to be involved, then you definitely need to have that contract reviewed by an attorney that specializes in that, so that you don't sell more than you think you're selling. The other part that happens is creative control often gets sacrificed in that process too, because the publisher who has a vested interest, and here I'm talking about a traditional publisher, who has a vested interest in lots of books being sold, may say, hey, that cover you like, or that title you like, or that part of the story you like, that you think is so great, just isn't really going to help sell our book. Oh, by the way, it's our book because we gave you in advance, right? So that has to be weighed. That's why we kind of take a different track with the way we publish. Our clients own everything. They own the rights to their books. They have the creative content. They own all their intellectual property. We set the books up in accounts that they own, so all royalties flow to them, and they get all their books at cost. So that's how we set ours up. And of course, we have to make some money somewhere, so we get paid upfront as we do these things. That's one model. But there's also the assisted self-publishing model. There is the traditional model, and then there are different versions of the hybrid model. I just described one, which is how we do it. But I think that's really important, that people are seeing what they're giving away and what they're losing. So I'm glad you guys brought up the whole idea of copyright, and that's something that others are better experts at than I am.
Hey, I also want to say, in the publishing world, there's no real competition. I mean, we have so many authors and wannabe authors and will be authors that are out there. I always just tell my clients, pick someone who you have a good rapport with, that you have a certain level of trust, and that you can work with and to see your project through, because some of the publishing piece is coaching, and when an author is frustrated that, you've turned back their manuscript and for more revisions, and they're like, well, you're costing me money. Well, no, I'm trying to make sure you have the best product that's going to hit the bookshelves. And so pick someone who you authentically can get along with, but also will challenge you and allow you to produce your very best work.
I have a question. This is absolutely so useful, and permit me, Dwayne, a second a question to either Everett or Christopher or both. The topic of self-publishing. One of the reasons for which we have not really assigned anything to any publisher yet is because exactly of the issue that Everett mentioned, the issue of property and ownership of the materials, which actually get transferred in most of the agreements. So we actually been contemplating the issue of self-publishing. Could you address that, both you, Christopher, and Everett, with regards to the topic that we are discussing?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Publishing used to be considered, self-publishing used to be considered a real negative, right? And people would look down on self-published books. Right now, I think the only people who look down on self-published books are traditional publishers and some bookstores. I think that the reader doesn't understand. In fact, I don't know, Dwayne, do we have screen sharing turned on? Because
I'm not sure, but
let me try. I'll just try it real quick.
Okay.
And then we'll find out if it's turned on.
Okay.
Hey, it's turned on.
There you go. You have it.
Yeah. So just a quick thing, self-publishing, a lot, like people used to think like I get no respect, right? But there have been some really prominent books that have come out through self-publishing. So for instance, the entire 50 Shades of Grey started self-published.
Wow.
In 2011, I think they've done okay. The Martian, Andy Weir, started this by blogging it, and then turned around and created it into a Kindle, sold 35,000 copies of those, and then that landed the bigger contract, the movie, etc. And Beatrix Potter started self-published. She couldn't find the publisher that would do her art the way she wanted, so she printed the first 250 copies herself. And the Shack started self-published, and it goes on. And there are some really big names that have taken advantage of self-publishing over the years. So I say, don't be scared of self-publishing or some variety of it. Quite frankly, the publishing that we do, our authors are technically self-published because they own everything. We have our authors buy their own ISBN numbers. Like Christopher was referring to, Amazon will give you an ISBN number, but whoever controls the ISBN number technically controls the distribution of that book. You may still own your content, but not own the distribution. So you need to own the ISBN number. It's questionable as to if Amazon would really enforce the control they have when they provide a free ISBN number, but that ability is there. So I don't look away from self-publishing or some variety of it, because there are different varieties of it. You can still do self-publishing, but with the professional help of somebody like me or Christopher to make sure that what you put out is completely professional in quality, is up to the standards of traditional publishing, but has the flexibility and the IP ownership of self-publishing.
So self-publishing with professional help is the point.
I think it's a fantastic way to go. Also recognize that traditional publishing is almost impossible to land, and so time consuming. If you want to go the traditional route, your book that you maybe have finished writing today won't see daylight until 2014, more than likely.
Yeah.
And that means you've got to shop it to an agent. The agent's got to shop it to a publisher. Then you're going to go through the publishing process. And the publisher says no to the vast majority of projects that are presented to them. Mm-hmm. I have this another slide. If we have time later, I'll show you some crazy books that you can't believe how many of those people were turned down. You're like, the first Harry Potter book, they told her, don't quit your day job. Her book was turned down over 20 times by traditional publishers. Mm-hmm. Someone's kicking themselves. Yeah. But that happens all the time.
Yeah. And I have an example of three close friends who were very well established in their platform, international speakers, went to traditional publishing, and their point is just an absolute nightmare. So, yeah. And their information literally gone.
Ooh.
Right?
Ouch.
Yeah. So anyway, yes. Christopher, do you have another sharing with us that?
I second what Everett said. And again, I think that when we talk about self-publishing, there's I think every person who has a book needs help. And I don't care who you are, you need help.
Everyone who has a book needs professional help.
Yeah, they sure do, right? I mean, they need help.
All the things that might mean.
Yeah. Because
do you know a therapist?
Yeah.
But seriously, it's what you don't know that bites you in the butt.
Yeah.
And once you go down the path of saying, I got it all by myself, you lose. And I've seen some really well-written books that are ranked like 16,000, on the debut of the book, and they never achieve any level of performance that, they can be proud of, but yet they put a lot of time into their book. Mm-hmm. I don't want people to think that you're going to be the next Joel Osteen, right? And put bestseller after bestseller out there. But, there are different ways that you can achieve your passion and your goals of writing and distributing your book throughout the world. That's the great thing about why we have this global authors forum. And, even one topic that we didn't even talk about was, like, I'm sure you've seen a number of people who have enjoyed having bestsellers. Well, there's so many different bestseller opportunities, some with Amazon, some with New York Times bestseller, some with USA Today. I mean, there are a number of ways in which you can help an author achieve their goal. And I don't think that any goal is less than another. Well, maybe. There's more money associated with New York Times bestsellers. So that's a lie. But I do know that for you to be able to achieve, the dream of whatever you have, you just have to work with someone who you trust. And these days, self-publishing combined with a publishing company works.
Christopher, excuse me, see, while you're still there, I just want to add this. In March, we had Elise, who's one of your clients.
Oh, yeah.
And she went on and on and on about how wonderful you are and how you really put forth the strategies to help her get her book off the ground. And that engaged my persistence on getting you here today. So would you please share a little bit of your Elise story?
Yeah, sure. Well, Elise is a member of Global Chamber, and she wrote a memoir about her journey with the rock group Kiss. I don't know if we have any Kiss fans, but Elise basically documented her story as a young woman growing up in New York, coming through, a family that had various levels of dysfunction, and how she emerged into a professional environment in Japan. And then told a story about how she was able to land this opportunity to promote a relatively new group called Kiss, and then her journey with the band, and then her future opportunities. And so when she came to me, and we were just talking about, she was going down the self-publishing path and doing it, based off of what she could find in research. And I was like, but, in order to get to your book to bestseller status, you really need my help, because I knew I could help her. And I was proud to say that in her book, she was at the #1 of Amazon in like 5 different or 6 different categories for over a month. I mean, she was steady. And that's, so for me, I like to see my clients get to the top, but then also to ride the wave for as long. And so during the various engagements in Austin, she would give speeches about her book. She got her book and she just went out there and really did podcasts. She did everything that an author should do in the first month to make her book stand out. And so her book, Under My Skin, doing still very well competitively. When I looked at the rankings, she's still in the top 20 in each category, even though she may not be the #1 right today. She did hit the #1 in several categories. And again, a part of my strategy, what I do is I help the authors to figure out how to describe their books, the keywords that they need to use for their books, and then how to initiate, maybe a Kindle version, and then the timing of their releases and so forth. So there's more science to this. There's more algorithm work that has to be done. It's not something in which, you can really figure out on your own, unless you want to spend lots of hours trying to figure this out and experiment, but you don't have the time to do that. So come to Everett, come to me, and give us the benefit of working with you, because this is what we do. And that's what I say, this is what we do.
And Everett, I'm sure you have an author success story. Share yours. Pick one.
Yeah, let me really
Yeah.
quick just kind of gloss what Christopher said, because one of the things, like, I love the legal status of self-published. I don't love the process of self-published for most people. But owning everything and having control over everything and all of that is great. But the challenge with self-publishing also is it means, yes, you have control over all of those things. You also have to make every one of those decisions and make them right, make them correctly. So, every little decision, like, what's the font, what size, what's the margin going to be, and the gutter on the page, and doing your artwork correctly, and doing categories correctly, doing the research that Christopher's referring to when it comes to category placement, carrying out a bestseller launch. All of those things need expertise in order to work successfully. And any one of those things that goes off the chart, it goes off the rails, takes the whole project off the rails. I mean, you guys have all seen books that maybe had phenomenal stories in them or phenomenal content, but the cover was clearly self-published and looked like it was done in Microsoft Word or on PowerPoint or something like that. We've all seen them, and it immediately destroys the credibility of the book. In fact, it probably, instead of building the credibility of the author, damages the credibility of the author. So do things right? I mean, I think that's the story there. And then as far as stories, I've got a great one for the global stage. I had an author, I have to call her Cindy because I can't use her real name. She told me I could tell her story, but not with her real name. She came to me, she was headed to a conference in Dubai in a couple months. She had written a book about medical tourism. And she goes, Everett, can you help me finish this and get it published and launched before I go? I said, yeah, absolutely. So we did it. We actually did it. She, received copies in hand just days before she got on the plane for Dubai. She went to Dubai, and her purpose there was to just use the book to try to establish some contacts. While there, she, on the first day of the conference, she handed several copies of the book out to people that she thought would be key people to develop relationships with. That night, as she was walking around the hotel, she sees in the lobby one of the people sitting down there reading her book. And she's like, okay, well, this is really cool. I love this. The next morning, two people came up to her and said, hey, last night I read your book that you gave me, and let's talk further. Well, let's talk further ended up being 2 huge contracts for her. And springboarding off that event, she was asked to then contribute a chapter to a textbook, which now put her in the intelligentsia academic, world, which was a great feather in her cap. She landed these clients, and then the next year she was sponsored by one of those clients to come back and be a paid speaker at the same conference. So that book took her really from anonymity to then speaking on the world stage in her field. The expertise and authority that it gave her was off the charts, not to mention paid clients, right, that came about as a result. And that's just an example of leveraging a book and making money in ways other than through royalties. By the way, funny story, Roberto, or Professor, you mentioned talking about international copyright. I don't remember who it is, but there was a guy I was talking to who his book is being printed in Russia, at least as of a couple of years ago, illegally was being printed and reproduced in Russia. Some guy in Russia was selling signed copies of his book. So this guy was forging the author's signature and selling them online. And the author said, ultimately, you know what? I don't care. He's bringing me business. Like these people are coming, these people are reading the book and then going to his website and, engaging with his company, even though they bought a forged copy of his book. So there's the other side of the copyright issue.
How amazing.
I'll tell you this, when, we all will die, right? And when you have a book and you have a copyright and you die, where does that copyright go to? Mm-hmm. And do your heirs even understand what you did when you were living and how that should be a part of your estate? Mm-hmm. And so those are thoughtful conversations that you also have to think about if you're an author. What happens in the future after I'm no longer here?
Yeah, one of the things that we looked at from a copyright point of view is, should we use our name or should we use another name, name de la plume, as we say in Europe? And what's really interesting is that the Berne Convention covers you even though you are anonymous for 50 years. So it's really interesting. And I just put in the chat room the actual title and description of the burn, so you can actually get to it. But I just love today. I just love it. Thank you, Everett, and thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Dwayne, and thank you, Gloria. I mean, this is important information. I wish I had you guys before we start the process. Fortunately, we have not published yet. So I'll contact either one of the two of you and find out how you can help us, because the thing is like a baby. We don't want to be stolen or kidnapped by somebody else. So.
And you don't want an ugly baby either, right?
Okay. Well,
And that's the thing. If people, well, professional help can make the baby pretty.
Absolutely.
Funny. Oh, I love it. Good comments there.
Actually, question, Everett and Christopher, could you be so kind to put how do I contacted you, and Christopher, my wife will contact you definitely, because we're looking for people like you right now. Sorry, Dwayne.
Oh,
I didn't
no.
mean to make it personal, but I think these two guys are so incredible that, you know.
Well, Professor, I tell you, first of all, it's always a delight every time we get to see you and your sharing as well. So, and then just your points that you're making here now reinforce for our listeners that here we have professional people very engaged with this whole process, still realizing that they need this professional help and guidance, because there are twists and turns to the process that, you know, it's the old adage, and Christopher mentioned it earlier. We have no idea what we don't know. So that's really the right point. So good.
You know, what I used to teach in class is that in business is not what you know that can create your failure, but is what is that you don't know.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right.
The scary one is the thing you don't know, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Wouldn't it be great if we knew all that we didn't know? Yeah. I was going to ask too, when you do a traditional copyright, is there a time limit? Because someone mentioned 50 years for the Berne Convention, but and then is it renewable at that point? And that's it. It's just 50 years for Berne, and then that's done.
What's really interesting is there is no extension provided for anybody after the 50 years.
But can you reapply it at that point if you wanted to? For example, if it were in a trust, and the trust could set up a time frame and then reapply that, because that's one of the things to do with your books is to put them in a trust and have that be there for the ongoing. So
I would suggest to actually either get an attorney to give you the answer, because that's the point. Or go to actually the text and the conditions of the Convention of Berne and read it through. It's quite lengthy, but I'm sure that they have addressed that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm just going to add this, if I can interrupt just for a second. I have a book. It's an etiquette book that was written probably and that's why I keep turning around. I thought I had it on my shelf here, but I think I put it away because it's falling apart. But it was written in the 1800s, and one of the first etiquette books ever written. And I was told that after 75 years, if I have this correct, I could actually take that piece and have it reproduced and take ownership of it. I haven't done that. I'm holding on to it. Certainly it's well over 75 years, but because it was one of the first etiquette books ever written in our history. And what's interesting about that book is when I found it, a friend of mine found it in her attic. And she said, oh, well, Gloria teaches etiquette. I'll just give this to her. And I thought, oh my God, she has no idea what she just gave me, you know? And when I was living in Chicago, I recognized North Shore, because when she started talking about certain areas, she was in the North Shore of Chicago area. It was like the most amazing book. So my question, I don't know, Everett or Christopher, if you have the answer, or even Professor Roberto, but is there like a 75-year where something can be grabbed and reproduced under your name with a credit to the original author?
So you're talking about in the public domain, right? Is works that have fallen into the public domain, and I won't profess to know the time period, but every year more and more books fall into the public domain, and I believe, I'm not sure if it's the Gutenberg Project, publishes a list as more and more books fall into the public domain. Ironically, the very first book I ever did was a public domain book. I had a side business called Nights at School, where I would dress up as a knight and I would go into schools and get to like history presentations for 7th graders. And I found this old book from the Middle Ages. I went ahead and published it with, I just wrote an introduction for it. So, put that up online. And yeah, you can do that. Now, Amazon is getting tighter and tighter about accepting books in the public domain. So just be aware that they may not let you. On the other hand, if you go type in the name of any famous older book on Amazon, you'll find 12 versions of it. I think what you're talking about, Gloria, where it's just really clear that you're giving credit to the author rather than, appropriating their work, and you are bringing their work back out to the, into the limelight. I think that's valuable. I really think that that's terrific. If you're finding nuggets of wisdom that you can bring out and share, by all means, I do it. But yeah, as far as how old, I'm sure your book is, that's well past.
Yeah, and let me add on to that because, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill is probably like one of the top 5 books that have been republished. And what has happened is people who see their niche in certain areas such as business or finance, they will craft a creative forward. They will craft, an intro that's truly different, and then they will republish these books to brand themselves with the industry in which they're promoting. So as I'm talking to this global chamber audience, there are things in which you're doing right now, international trade. There are things that you're doing in your business that you really need to find some of those public domain items, and then see if you agree with them so much, morph it into something that makes it your own, and reintroduce it under Everett or myself, and then see that you'll see a spike in your overall acceptance in your profession, because now you're a published author who has some works behind your name that help your brand, and it helps your bottom line, and it helps our bottom line too, right, Everett?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt, and definitely the easiest way to create a book, right? The easiest way to write a manuscript, for sure.
And Gloria, just an answer. I just did a little bit of research on the internet, and I posted actually in the chat room. But basically, what I have discovered is that when a intellectual property moves into what I call the public domain after the 50 years protection, becomes of public ownership, but it cannot be owned by anybody else. So you can use it, but you cannot claim your own. But as Everett said, you can always use it, change it, modify it, use the approach, and make it your own.
Isn't it amazing what we can learn in a short hour, huh? Hey, thank you all very much. This has just been spectacular. I just a mind expanding process here in such a casual, fun event with just terrific experienced people sharing real life stories, and just in my mind, just helping us build, broader understanding, but also in us to have enough depth of understanding to know that we can engage with you, and people like us who are authors can be the right kind of client for you, because I'm sure that I've always thought that being a great client for a professional is its own effort and process. So anyway, that's really, really helpful to us. And just for those watching and those that might see this in a recording, we do have another event next month on the 15th of June. And that's going to be hosted by Jacqueline Wales, who has been a part of this group from the beginning. And of course, we want to give
time out, Gloria says.
Oh,
it changed because Jacqueline's going to be gone, so it's going to be Professor and
oh,
Roberto.
so
They switched. Those two switched.
There we go. Well, see, that's what I get for looking at the internet. You can't trust this darn internet, you know. Anyway, okay, well, that'd be great. And of course, let's just give Gloria a minute or two. Why don't you?
Well, Professor's going to do it, not
You
me.
think so? Well, I just want you to know that we're all here because this Gloria lady, Morning Glory, has been real. I'm going to use the word tenacious. The word tenacity now has her picture in the dictionary, and she's been wonderful at getting this moved along. So we're very appreciative of you, Gloria. But Professor Ansis, we're looking forward to next month as well, and just continuing to do our mind.
And what I'm planning to do is what I usually do when I'm involved in these kind of engagements. The stars of the next month are going to be the authors of the books. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be a conduit. So to do that, before the meeting, I actually have an interview with them to find out what I call in business the pain points that they had to overcome. And then they become the highlight, because like today, when they start talking about copyrights, they say, of course, yeah. And then, of course, there is the issue of ownership of the book and the delegation and whatnot. So next month is going to be really interesting because we're going to have both nonfiction and fiction writers present. And I'm really very curious in terms of the difference, not the difference in formatting or whatever, but actually what inspired to do this instead of that? And what are the challenges? Because, you know, writing a book, for example, if I were to write a book, how to start your own company, well, you know, I don't even have to think about it. You know, it's done in about 2 days or 3 days. But when you start talking about the book that we wrote, how do you deliver rules of life to people in a manner so that people will not resist the message? Because typically, like when you're a child, everybody resists anything new. 87% people don't want to have anything to do with it. So the question is, how do we apply the theory of change in a textbook when there is really not a duplex communication? And so I think we find a way to bring back people to a time of almost childhood, whereby the learning lesson at the end of the book are actually reconciled with today living. So it's a fun thing to do, and it's actually a how-to book, but it's not a how-to book. So the question is, so next month, we're going to investigate what are some of the elements, starting all the way from the idea, the creation, the formatting, the target market, the marketing, the application, the expansion, et cetera, and the protection, of course. So it's going to be really an exciting, as it was today. And today, I want to thank you, Dwayne and Gloria, for being here, and Everett and Christopher, you are fantastic. I'm so glad that I got here today, and referral is the secret of my business of 40 years, and you'll be referred.
Well,
thank you also for your discussion of the international copyright, because I think that's it's an area, honestly, that we could learn more about. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, and it's really good being in a group like this where it's clear that we're all learners. Everyone here just ears perked and ready to learn and go. And recently, after I turned 29 here recently, you know, it has sort of accelerated because I realize, oh my gosh, there's so much more I don't know than I ever thought I might have known. So it's a great time. Thank you all for a spectacular session, just magnificent, really just really important information and delivered marvelously. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
So we'll end this. Bye, and thank you all, and we'll see you on the next event. And Professor Ansis, thank you. We'll see you next week or next month.
Next month, 15th of June. Mark it on your calendar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Well, by the way, we're very important. We'll serve digital donuts.
There you go.
Ah.
I like that.
Okay, thank you very much.
And again, thank you, Doug. I know you're listening. Thank you, Doug Berkey, the Global Chamber. It's just you guys.
Cesar, Doug, thank you all very much. You guys are marvelous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Okay, bye now.
Great stuff.